The line is currently 7. I believe it opened at 7.5. Green Bay was favored by 7.5 to start. This is a teacher versus student matchup. There's a lot of familiarity with this game. Of course, you have Matt LaFleur, who I think is actually older than Sean McVay, but he is the student in this matchup, versus the teacher, Sean McVay, because Matt LaFleur, of course, was the offensive coordinator for Sean McVay with the Rams. He then went over, took the job, I believe, with Tennessee, and found his way to Green Bay eventually. I think that's how it worked. Don't remember exactly. But regardless, LaFleur was under McVay, and now they're facing each other in the playoffs. That's a pretty cool story, at least for those two. Now, some of the other headlines for this game: how healthy are the quarterbacks for the Rams? Aaron Rodgers is fine. The MVP is all good. He's had time to rest up his right arm. But in terms of the Rams, we're talking Wolford, we're talking Jared Goff. And I think one of the more interesting insights I found over this past week was listening to Michael Lombardi's podcast, The GM Shuffle. If you don't listen to it, I recommend it. Great show. He talked about the health of Wolford and Goff last week, and actually he was speaking to some people inside the Rams organization as well as in Vegas and how they approach that situation versus Seattle. So I came on here last week and I said, without knowing this information, that I felt whether it was Goff or Wolford, this is why I was confident in the Rams to win the game regardless, is because Vegas felt that no matter who the quarterback was, the line would not change. So the line stuck where it was, 3.5, minus 3.5 for Seattle, because they felt that Wolford or Goff, there was no difference in how good the Rams would perform on Sunday, which tells you a little bit about Wolford and tells you a little bit about Goff. Now, in terms of the Rams organization, they seemingly were going to start, apparently, according to Michael Lombardi, they were going to start Jared Goff for no reason at all. They were not going to start him, right? No matter if he was 100%, they were thinking Wolford was going to be the guy all week long, and they were going to go into the game with him. So that tells you that they actually wanted to start Wolford. It just didn't have to do with the health of Jared Goff. So that's something to consider about this matchup. They felt last week Wolford gave them a better chance to win versus Seattle. I don't know if they feel the same way this week. It does appear that Jared Goff will be the guy this week, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Now, continuing on that, I think it has to do with the weather. I think I would be more confident if Wolford were the quarterback for the Rams to pull off the potential upset. And it's not because I think Wolford's a better quarterback. I think plenty of you out there think Goff's the better quarterback, and I think I would still say that as well. But the weather aspect of this in Lambeau Field, I know what Jared Goff is in bad weather, and it's usually not pretty, okay? Especially with the thumb injury that, in the cold weather, it could swell up, it could be uncomfortable. Cold weather tends to do things to injuries that aren't exactly great. Trust somebody who played sports in Vancouver. When it's raining, when it's cold or snowing, it's not exactly comfortable for your body, okay? Whether that's your back, your thumb, your legs, no matter what it is, it's better to play in warm weather. But I think that Wolford actually gives them a better opportunity to win because of his mobility in a weather environment where Jared Goff, he is basically a statue in the pocket. If he's not throwing it 100% and the wind is affecting his arm, I think Wolford's ability to move and to run on design runs and play action boots actually gives them a better opportunity in this environment. Now, good for the Rams. They are going to be traveling from the West Coast to Lambeau, but there will not be snow in this game. At least that's what the weatherman says. It's expected to be cold. It might be a little windy, but it's not going to be snowing, which I think is a major factor. I think if this game were snowing, I would not give the Rams much of a chance of winning this game. But because it will just be cold, I think that's fine. I don't think that has much of a factor. I mean, these guys are all tough NFL players. I know that they live in LA, might be a little cushy there in terms of the weather, but they should be fine. They should be used to playing in cold environments by now in the NFL. And it shouldn't be, it will be colder than Seattle, but not a lot colder. It's expected to be 25 Fahrenheit, which is cold, but again, no precipitation, which is the big deal there. You really need to pay attention to rain, snow, all that stuff is way more important, or wind is more important to throwing the football than hot or cold. So those are the headlines that I took from this game. Now let's take a look at the tail of the tape. So the Los Angeles Rams, 17th in offensive DVOA. The Green Bay Packers are first. Of course, we know the Packers will be facing the best defense in all of football this week. The MVP versus arguably the two best defensive players in the NFL in Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Now, Green Bay's defense might be the unit that could step up and help them win this game, ranking 14th in the NFL this year, which is slightly better than the Rams' offense. Point differential speaks for itself. Green Bay has been dominant this year. And the turnover differential, which is always key to winning and losing games. Green Bay does a good job of protecting the ball, mostly due to their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. So let's start off with the Rams offense versus the Packers defense. I think this is kind of the secondary matchup. Everybody's looking forward to the Packers offense versus the Rams defense, but this is a matchup that very well could determine the game, in my opinion. So, Cam Akers and the Rams run game, I think, is going to be crucial in this one. We've seen when the Packers have lost the last couple of years, teams have had success running the football. They've had success keeping Aaron Rodgers on the sideline and then shrunk the game in the process, put more pressure on Rodgers to make big plays. And especially when you're playing a defense, you need to be able to maximize your opportunities. So it's on Green Bay's defense to get the ball back quickly, to stuff the run and allow Rodgers as many opportunities as possible to score, right? Because if you limit the opportunities already facing a great defense, if you're the Rams, your percentage points of winning this game drastically rise. Now, when it comes to what the Rams offense may look at to try to replicate or try to attack this defense, I think a couple things come to mind for Sean McVay, who is one of the better offensive coaches in football and play callers in the league, who typically has a good mix of run and pass. We know he loves the outside, inside zone, the play action. I think he'll take a look at the same tree as his, which is Kyle Shanahan's tape from the NFC Championship a year ago, maybe also earlier this year, although the 49ers do not have the talent in that game. They had multiple backups, but he might be able to look at both of those games in terms of successful within this scheme, rushing attack and passing attack and play action, as well as Gary Kubiak as the offensive coordinator for Minnesota, who played the Packers twice. In fact, actually beating him once, mostly to do with the offense and the rushing attack of Minnesota. So my question for the Packers is, does Pettin kind of simplify his defense to help them stop the run? Because we understand that when the Rams are just a drop back pass attack, when they don't have their play action to feed off of, they're not a very good passing attack. So this is where it becomes interesting. Will the Packers be able to stop the run just typically doing what they do? I don't think they will be able to. I think McVay will coach them up enough on the offensive side, as well as the Rams just already being a good offensive running team, where they'll find success on the ground versus the Packers, which means I feel the Packers are going to have to change their style of defense a little bit in terms of just making things a little bit more sound instead of complicated, instead of like Pettin loves to run a lot of like blitzing schemes and like cross blitzers, and this guy drops and that guy goes, which a lot of times it's great. It's awesome for defending the pass, which is why the Packers are better versus the pass than they are the run. But when teams are running the ball in certain areas and they're running it right where you're blitzing, or they're running away from where you're blitzing and they're hitting you in that spot at the right time, that's kind of what Kyle did last year to this defense, and that's why it looked like they were playing a high school team, because they just ran them over because Pettin was trying to be so elaborate and so all over the place, and not just like, okay, this is what we're doing, like, let's simplify this week. We need to focus on stopping the run. So my question is, will Pettin do that, Or will he continue to try to mix things up and be elaborate and be creative on that side of the ball, which I don't think he needs to do in this matchup. I think he needs to focus on the run game first. And I think that's definitely at the top of the priorities for Green Bay's defense. The question also is, how much is the Packers, have they improved defending the run? Because this year they haven't been very good. Last year they were worse. So that is probably what will determine the game, because I think we're going to get into the other side of the ball, but I think it's going to be a stalemate on the other side of the ball. I feel like Rodgers and the Packers offense is going to make some plays. The Rams defense is going to make some plays, but it's really what comes down to who wins this game. If the Rams are able to run the ball, it's going to give them a lot better chance of pulling off this upset. Now, Green Bay brought in Snacks Harrison, who helped them versus the Bears. He had a pretty good game. He looked pretty good versus the Bears. They're a little different of a team, and they're not as good of a rushing attack, but he did seem to help their size in the middle of their defense. But I don't really think that's what's essential to defending the Rams. I think we've seen that the teams that have been able to defend the Rams have been able to set the edge versus the Rams. And that's going to be the bigger dilemma for Green Bay, is setting the edge. So I feel like guys like Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith on the edge, playing those tackles or tight ends, are going to be much more important than a guy like Snacks, although the size might help a little bit on the inside run. It might help guys like Kenny Clark get into the backfield and make plays like that. So some interesting stats I found from this matchup. The Green Bay Packers have 3 losses this season, and all 3 involve the other team having over 140 rushing yards in the game. So I know that sounds like, okay, yeah, you run the ball when you're winning, so that makes sense, right? Yes, I get it. But when you actually look close at those games, I think the only game that you could really point to that the run game was a factor, but not like the biggest factor, was the Tampa game, where Tampa, it was more about their defense. But the other games, specifically Minnesota and Indianapolis, both teams ran for over 140 yards. Minnesota ran for 173 yards, which again is the same scheme, similar scheme at the very least of Sean McVay. And they won the game in a shootout. So running the ball is a factor there. Same as Indianapolis, who ran the ball for 140 yards and won in overtime. And Tampa Bay ran for 158 yards, but kind of won in a blowout. So I don't think it was really because the other team had a lead. It was just because they had success running the ball. The Packers have lost 3 of 4 games versus the teams that have ranked inside the top 12 in rushing DVOA. So the one team they beat was Tennessee a couple weeks ago. They played the run great, but that game was in the snow, which is important to factor in because I think that hurt Tennessee significantly in other aspects of the game, and even in the running game a little bit. I don't think they could find their footing, even though they ran the ball kind of well, Tennessee, even though they got blown out. But the other games, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Indy were the 3 other teams that ranked in the top 12 rushing the ball. The Rams ranked 7th, I think. So this is, typically a bad matchup for this defense. The Vikings specifically beat Green Bay with Kirk Cousins only throwing 14 times. So that tells you how much they lean on the running game. The Packers run D, just statistically 21st in yards per attempt, 12th in explosive runs allowed, so not bad there. And the Rams kind of outdo them on the offensive line. Adjusted line yards are 7th. Green Bay's defense 23rd. The specific area that you should be watching in this game, in my opinion, is the left side of the line. So these are things like, if you want to take notes or just kind of watch and take mental notes, is like watch this game and watch where the Rams are running the ball. So statistically, the Rams are very good at running the ball to the left, and Green Bay is very bad at defending the ball to the left, or running the ball to the left. So the Rams rank 5th running the ball to the left end with 4.9 yards per attempt. The Packers rank 25th versus the run to the left, allowing 5.1 yards per attempt. So that is the side, I think, behind Andrew Whitworth and the left side, that I think the Rams will have their most success running the football. So watch for that for sure if you're watching this game. Now, when it comes to the passing game, I think it will be an extension of the running game, as it always is from Sean McVay. But there will be some big matchups, and obviously throws will have to be made in this game to win, as always. I expect Alexander, who is PFF's #1 graded corner this year, to line up on Robert Woods. That would be my guess for a majority of the game, especially given Cooper Kupp's health. I expect Woods to be the guy that Alexander tries to take out of the game. Now, the interesting thing there is the Rams do a very good job of getting the ball to Woods, whether that's in the backfield on running plays or on screen plays. So definitely watch for that. And I'm telling you, Green Bay's tackling will be tested by Sean McVay. Cooper Kupp, the health of him is important, obviously essential. Sullivan is their nickel corner. I think it's Chandon Sullivan for Green Bay. He's okay. He ranked 59th by PFF this year. He'll be asked to cover Cooper Kupp in man-on-man situations from the nickel position. And I think Cooper Kupp's health will have a lot to do with his production. But if he is healthy, he'll be the guy that probably moves the chains more often than not. I'd also expect a lot of 2 tight end sets from the Rams, Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett, because they'll be running the ball so much. And I wouldn't be shocked if either of them scored a touchdown in the game. But again, guys, I think the main focus on that side of the ball is running the ball for the Rams. And I do expect them to have a fair amount of success doing so. And if they can get themselves in manageable third downs, they should have the advantage in power running situations and move the ball decently well enough to keep Rodgers on the sidelines to make this game interesting. So then we come to the big matchup of the day, which is the Rams defense facing the Packer offense. Now, an interesting thing to note here is that neither team has faced as good of a unit on the other side of the ball all year. So the Packers have not faced a defense quite as good as the Rams, and the Rams have not faced a unit quite as good as the Packers. Now, the Rams have faced very good quarterbacks this year. The Packers have faced pretty good defenses this year, but neither have played as elite of a unit. The Rams have not played, and I guess it would only be really, to be honest with you, the Rams defense is clearly the best defense in the NFL. Like, I don't think the Packers could have played any team unless they played the Rams that would replicate what the Rams could give matchup-wise to the Packers. But the Rams, it is fair to say that they have not played an offense either that is as good or as balanced as the Packers. They have not played Kansas City. They did play Buffalo very early in the year, which is hard to take anything from. They played Tampa, which we know Tampa's a different team. But those are the only teams that would be kind of like in the same conversation as the Packers. So from there, we then go to the coaching matchup once again. Obviously, I mean, Brandon Staley has been the best defensive coordinator this year and has done an absolute superb job of making quarterbacks frustrated and antsy and putting his players in the right position to succeed. I think the key here is how much does Sean McVay kind of allow, kind of give like hints or tips, or just like how much knowledge can he actually extract from the Packers offense? Because obviously Sean McVay is a major benefactor or a major factor in the creation of Matt LaFleur's offense, in combination with the influence from the Shanahans a little bit as well. But I would think that when both coaches are watching the opposing offense, they would be able to give, their defensive coordinator some good tips on how to defend something or how to attack something, how to get pressure after somebody, or how to stop the run specifically. So I think that is really interesting. Just how much can McVay help his defensive coordinator, because he knows everything about LaFleur's offense. That will be something to watch for sure. So I think what LaFleur will be doing throughout the week, if I were him, would be looking at Kyle Shanahan's tape to kind of help influence how I'm going to attack this defense, because San Francisco was the only team to beat the Rams twice this season, and I think that had a lot to do. And Richard Sherman also brought this up on Chris Collinsworth's a podcast as well. He talked about kind of like how Kyle has had success versus the Rams defense and how maybe LaFleur would be able to replicate some of that stuff. I think the Packers, to have success on offense, will have to stay balanced in this game. I think they're going to have to run the ball even when they don't want to. Because I think when you look at the matchups passing the ball, I know this might be shocking to you, but I don't think the Packers have many good matchups in this game, like whatsoever. I think the Packers are out-talented on that side of the ball. I think the Rams just have more good players on their defense than the Packers have more good players on their offense. As good as the Packers' offense has been, it's mostly two players. And that might be neutralized by Jalen Ramsey. And that is the matchup that we're going to really focus on, that everyone's going to focus on. Hopefully the broadcast focuses on. Like, I'd almost like to see like the game on a big picture and then a little box in the right corner, and we have Ramsey and Adams in the right corner. But that is the matchup that could determine this game. If Jalen Ramsey shuts down Davante Adams, I almost think that the Rams will win the game. Not just have a chance, but will win the game. I'm talking about if Davante Adams does not have over 50 yards, I think it's a very good chance that the Rams win the game. And that's why I'm saying that the Packers need to find a way to have success running the ball, because the Rams, the way that their defense is kind of created, it's very pro stop the pass. Even though they've been good stopping the run, which is just a testament to how talented their defensive line is, I just think the Packers kind of have to say, I think our defense can do a decent enough job to the fact that we can be a little bit more conservative on offense today. We don't need to try to force it to Adams. We don't need to try to win this game through the air constantly. Although they'll need to, they can, I think, just almost like a 50-50 split, like a 60-40 split. Run the ball and keep it kind of manageable. You don't want to get in third down and long versus the Rams, because that's basically suicide versus Aaron Donald and this pass rush and the creativity that they have in coverage. And I don't think Rodgers is just going to be able to sit back there and 5 wide and just be like, throw here, throw there. They're outmanned. I really feel like Williams facing Valdez-Scantling, that's a L. Troy Hill facing Alan Lazard, that's an L. John Johnson facing Robert Tonyan, that's an L. So I just think one of those players, though, with Lazard, Scantling, Tonyan, is going to have to, or maybe it's Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams, one of them is going to have to make a play in the passing game at some point. But really, when I look at it, guys, from that perspective, the Rams have the best secondary in the league for a reason. A lot of it is scheme, but a lot of it is also talent, which I think is a little bit slipped under the radar, because everybody talks about Jalen Ramsey, but they also have a lot of other good plays. I mean, Williams made the best play a defensive back's made all year in the game just last week. Now, when we talk about up front, obviously we all know that David Bakhtiari is out for this game as well as the entirety of the playoffs. Now, they tried to sign Jared Valdir, who's a veteran left tackle in this league, played for the Broncos for a lot of years, was on the Colts last week, actually played last week. So he would have been the first player ever to play in 2 consecutive weeks in the playoffs. But he's been put on the COVID list, so he can't play. So now they're going to have to put probably Billy Turner at left tackle and have Wagner at right tackle to fulfill their offensive line. The interior of the Packers offensive line is complete. They don't have any injuries. Elgton Jenkins is a really good player, ranking 22nd from PFF at guard. Corey Linsley is the best center in the league. And Patrick is ranked 38th. So if there's a weakness there, it's probably Patrick at right guard, I believe. So I would expect Aaron Donald, the rib injury might be a factor, but I expect him to be at least 90%. Of course, you have Michael Brockers, you have a bunch of guys in there, Fox, all these guys that have made plays. And I expect the guy that might have the biggest impact, or if the Rams win, will have the biggest impact, is because the Packers will be focused on blocking the interior. It could be Leonard Floyd because of the absence of David Bakhtiari. And he's had a great year this year. He's had double-digit sacks. He's very athletic, so he'll chase down Aaron Rodgers if he gets outside the pocket. But I'd expect him to be the guy that gets maybe a couple pressures if the Rams win this game. But I think it more has to do, and this is where I think it's underappreciated from the Rams' defensive perspective, is I think their defensive line is very good, but I think it has more to do with their secondary does so many things that kind of makes a quarterback confused for like a second, or at least like moves off their first read for a second consistently, where then the pressure just is insurmountable and they collapse the pocket and get to you. The Rams are actually 8-0 this year when allowing 19 or fewer points. They're just 3-6 when allowing 20 or more points. So I would say probably the key number for Green Bay that they want to get to is like 21 to 24 points. And anything more than that would just kind of be gravy because they'd have a really good chance of winning the game. Now, from a statistical perspective, the Rams are the only cornerback unit to not allow a 20-plus yard passing touchdown this entire season. And the Packers were a very explosive downfield passing attack, especially Valdez-Scantling and Devontae Adams, ranking 5th in explosive pass plays. The Rams ranked 1st in the least amount of explosive pass plays allowed. Now, if there's any history to this matchup, Brandon Staley was in Denver last season as Vic Fangio's linebacking coach, and Vic Fangio runs a similar scheme, who, of course, Vic Fangio was a coach of Chicago defense a couple years ago, but I couldn't really look at that because Matt LaFleur wasn't the offensive coach. But Rodgers in that game went 17 for 29, 235, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 96 rating. Was decent, not great. Packers won 27-16. A lot of that had to do with Joe Flacco getting sacked 6 times. But yeah, that I don't know if you want to take that. I just put that as a little nugget. But that's the only history I could find between the D coordinator and the quarterback. Overall, I think this is a really good game. I think if you guys understand what I've been saying this whole time, I pretty much am leaning towards a defensive game. I think the weather won't be a huge factor. It will be cold, but it won't be snowing. I think the Rams' probable inability to just make 1 or 2 passing plays will be the reason they lose. Unless Aaron Rodgers turns the ball over, which is possible. One of the games the Packers lost this year was because he turned the ball. That was the Bucs. So if the Rams defense can dominate the same way the Bucs defense did, which totally different schemes, totally different teams, totally different defenses. Of course, the Rams are better, but it's totally different, and Rodgers has been much better since then. So it's interesting. I think Rams fans have hope in this game because I think they'll run the ball a fair amount. That will keep the game close. The defense will make plays. I expect the Packers to just score over 20 points. I'm going to give the Packers 23 points. I'm going to say the Rams aren't able to get to 20, though. And again, remember that stat, 19 or fewer, the Rams are undefeated. I got the Rams at 17. So I'm going Packers 23-17. I think the reason the Packers win is because, one, Aaron Rodgers doesn't turn the ball over, even though he doesn't have a great game. And number 2 is the Packers defense does enough and wins this game with a couple big plays in the passing game and maybe a couple stops in the running game. Just they're not getting run over to the point where they'll be dominated. So I think the Rams will make this one close, cover the spread, but probably lose the game. That's kind of the way I feel. I'm personally, if I'm being honest, I'm cheering for the Rams to win. Even though I picked the Packers to win in my picks, I'm picking, I want the Rams, but I just can't. The quarterback mismatch is such to a massive degree that I just can't do it. Like, you're picking, Rodgers has been the best quarterback this year versus the worst quarterback left in the playoffs. It's just too much to me, I think, to overcome here. Even though we did say the same thing last week, we also talked about how familiar the Rams were with Seattle, which I think was a big factor. So